I'm Nathan Hobby, biographer of Katharine Susannah Prichard, the great Australian novelist and prominent communist. This final part of Katharine's life is about her years as the Red Witch from 1934 to 1969. After she was widowed, Katharine put all her energy into communism to cover her personal devastation. Throughout the rest of the 1930s, she was the driving force behind a number of Communist Front organisations, including the Movement Against War and Fascism and the Modern Women's Club. Communists faced increasing persecution, and it made her feel she must be right. Politics left Katharine with little time to write, but she had an ambitious vision for a trilogy of novels which told the story of the WA goldfields. In 1941, she spent a couple of productive months researching in Kalgoorlie, but the urgency of the war intervened and progress slowed. The Roaring 90s finally appeared in 1946, followed by Golden Miles in 1948 and Winged Seeds in 1950. The trilogy was Katharine's last major work, a saga which followed characters across 50 years from the 1890s to World War II, interweaving history and folklore. If it was too didactic in its politics for many reviewers, it was praised by others for its ambition and authenticity. Katharine's son, Rick, enlisted in 1942 and was sent to New Guinea. Katharine moved to Sydney so she could see him when he was on leave. While living there, she served on the Communist Party's Central Committee until 1946, when she returned to Greenmount. In the 1950s, she focused her political energy on the communist-approved Australian Peace Council. She had visitors and letters from around the world, but with Rick overseas before settling in Canberra, she was lonely. As the 1960s began, her heart was bad and she thought her time was up. Beatrice Davis, a publisher with Angus and Robertson, encouraged her to finish her autobiography, Child of the Hurricane, and it was released in time for her 80th birthday. Katharine was reinvigorated by a new decade of life and new attention to her work, and she began a new novel, Subtle Flame, about a journalist who becomes a peace activist. Then, in 1964, she suffered a stroke and nearly died. Against expectations, she recovered and pushed on with Subtle Flame. When it was published in 1967, she declared it to be her swan song. In those last years of Katharine's life, she had become a legendary figure, the Red Witch of Greenmount, as one journalist dubbed her. Many visitors from the Soviet Union made pilgrimages to her house. Although preparing for death for many years, she lived a full life right to the end. When death did come, it was unexpectedly sudden. On the 2nd of October 1969, after spending the day preparing for Rick to fly in that night, she suffered another stroke. She died not long before he arrived. In her long life, Katharine rarely took the easy option. She worked determinedly over decades to build a writing career against the odds. Her writings are full of the paradoxes of her life, marrying romance with realism, uneven but sometimes brilliant and always interesting, chronicling the people and places of Australia with a richness that deserves an ongoing readership. Katharine spent the first 35 years of her life seeking the solution to the world's problems. When she was sure she'd found it in the Russian Revolution, she embraced it wholeheartedly and lived the last 50 years of her life as a true believer. She was generous, stubborn, and always sincere. We can find in her incredible life inspiration and warning, drama, and unbelievable tragedy.